Hello, today I will be discussing some important steps to take with regards to maintaining your safety as a practicum student when in the field. The first is to be aware of the risks that may pose a risk to your safety, such as animals, people having pets, biohazards, interacting with clients who might be angry or aggressive, including clients who have high risk factors such as substance use or a history of violent behavior. In addition, thinking about clients or individuals in the field who are not clients who you might be interacting with, whether that be in agency neighborhoods or the general community. It's also important to be aware of certain precautions you should take to maintain your physical health, such as wearing a mask correctly, staying at home if you're sick, having annual TB test done, getting your yearly vaccinations, avoiding contact with bodily fluids, being aware of sharps in the home if people could potentially be using substances, and ensuring that you're reporting any exposure to infectious diseases. There's also a variety of procedures that different agencies have to maintain safety of their workers. So these should be aware of, and especially with regards to what your agency is doing to maintain your safety. A lot of agencies have training on de-escalation techniques. So if you are potentially interacting with clients who might become aggressive, it's important to be aware of what techniques you can use to de-escalate situations if clients do become aggressive, and how you can respond to crisis situations. It's also important that agencies are monitoring their workers' whereabouts. So some agencies, if workers are constantly having home visits, they will let their supervisors know what homes they're visiting on a certain day. They also might check in and out of the office so that agencies are aware of who all is in the office should something happen within the agency building. Some agencies also use law enforcement. For example, child protective service workers, if they're going into homes that are known to be aggressive, then they'll bring law enforcement with them, or they'll have a team response plan where they bring a coworker with them anytime they're going in a home and they have not met the client previously. It's also always important to be prepared for hostile clients, especially if you're meeting a client for the very first time, being aware that past behavior is a predictor for future behavior. So if a client has been aggressive in the past, being prepared for that. And that's when you might be able to take a team approach and have a coworker work with you with that client for the first time. You can learn this information by reading client records, reviewing their intake information. If others in the agency have met with a client previously, they might be able to give you some inside information, but always being aware of that potential. It's also important that you are maintaining safe practices when you're in your office, including wearing a mask if you're concerned about the spread of contagious diseases and social distancing, being aware of how your furniture is arranged. You don't want to block the doorway. So you want to ensure that your seat is closest to the door and that you don't have a bookshelf or other obstacles in the way of you leaving. And this does not just have to do with client safety or that clients might be hostile, but also thinking about if there's a fire or other dangerous situation, you would need to exit the building quickly. You should also be aware of when you're in your office, what's the fastest way out? Is there a window when you're on the first floor? Where are the stairs? What would be your route to take in case of a dangerous situation? Keeping weapons out of sight for clients, leaving the door open is going to be important unless there's a confidential meeting that you would be having with the client, and most importantly, alerting others if there's the potential for a dangerous client in the office, letting your coworkers know what to be aware of. It's also good to be aware of de-escalation techniques. So if you have a client who could potentially be hostile, which anyone could potentially be hostile, just being aware of what are some techniques you can use to help calm individuals down. The first and most important thing you should be doing is projecting that calmness in your demeanor and in your voice. You're using a calm tone. You're not raising your voice to an angry client. You're going to be projecting that calmness, that empathy, and you're also projecting confidence. If you seem scared, then the client is going to feed off of that fear. It's important that you ask individual very directly to change certain behavior. So if an individual is raising their voice to you and you're concerned about them being hostile, you can ask them very calmly, like, hey, let's take a step back and let's lower your voice. It's helpful to give individuals choices. So we can, if someone's becoming angry, you can say, hey, here are your two choices. We can either meet later when you're not as upset, or we can take a 5-minute break. Giving them choices helps put them in control and helps them kind of helps them restabilize their mood. Taking a break is important. Not touching an angry client, kind of leave that that should be in general, not touching individuals. Give them 4 feet of space, or else, touch can be really triggering for individuals, and recognizing that. And it's always important that you call for backup if needed, knowing who is available to help if the situation is out of your control. You need to be taking extra steps for safety when you're doing home visits, because you don't always know what is going to be in the home, especially if you haven't been in that home before. And you also need to be aware of your surroundings, because things might be happening out, even if the home you're visiting is safe. In the community, there might be other things going on. So that's why it's important that you're consulting with others. So if other workers have been in that home previously, talk to them about what you should be aware of. Make sure that you're going to the house a safe time of day. So especially if this is a neighborhood or a home you haven't visited previously, be there when it's light out, and you should be leaving when it's light out. So if you're visiting the home in winter and you plan your visit to start at 5 p.m., be aware that if it's going to be a 1-hour visit, it might be dark by the time you leave. So maybe plan it for earlier in the day. It's also important that people are aware of where you're going. So letting your supervisor or a friend know what time you should be returning home is going to be important, or what time you're going to be returning to the office. Always have your cell phone on you. Make sure it's fully charged. If you go on a lot of home visits, make sure you have a phone charger in the car, or else your phone battery might be dead by the time you're finishing your last visit. Make sure you're parking where it's easy to get out. You don't want to be trapped in. So I wouldn't recommend parking in driveways, because it's easy for someone to come and park behind you. So I would recommend parking on the street. Don't park tightly between 2 other cars, but you want to be parked in the situation where if you would need to leave quickly, you're going to be able to get out and you're not going to be blocked in. And of course, it's always important to scan your environment. So when you are parking, you're locking your doors, you're looking around for things that might seem a little off and clue you in that you might not be in the most safe situation. It's also important just in general when you're thinking about walking into a home, not wearing long necklaces or earrings, especially if you're working with kids. Those are easily grabbed. I had my glasses broken as a practicum student, and I would still recommend wearing glasses, but that's something that you're not always prepared for. And that's why, especially kids will pull on things. So be prepared for that. And maybe don't wear those long earrings or necklaces, because those can be used against you. Wear comfortable shoes and clothes that are easy to move in. Also clothes that you don't mind getting dirty if you're doing some home visits. Different individuals have different levels of cleanliness in their home. And if you're going to be wading through some not as sanitary conditions, it's important that you're not wearing your nice dress shoes. So that's where I would recommend, especially individuals who maybe are used to wearing heels, maybe don't wear heels, maybe wear flat shoes. And again, shoes that you can move quickly in, and it's okay if you get them dirty. I would also recommend having an extra pair of shoes and clothes in your car, just in case you need to change and you're going straight from one home visit to the other. Sit or stand as close to the door as possible. You always want to put yourself between the door and the client so you can exit if necessary. Being aware of what room you're located in. So guns are going to be more likely to be stored in bedrooms. Kitchens contain knives. So there's always going to be weapons available, and just be aware of that when you are choosing to move into a certain room, especially depending upon the past history of violent behavior with the client that you're working with. If you feel threatened, then you should leave. Anytime that you feel uncomfortable, exit the situation. If you're uncomfortable, if the home seems dangerous, trust your gut feelings and leave. Even if you are only 5 minutes in, if you don't want to insult the client, that you don't feel comfortable in their home, make an excuse. An emergency happened. I forgot that I have this appointment. Can I please reschedule? It's okay. Your safety is the most important thing, and you can always make an excuse to leave the situation. If a home does feel safe, then by all means proceed and be there. The most important thing that is that you're aware of your surroundings, figure out who else is in the home, because even if you trust your client and you don't think your client is dangerous, you don't know who else might be there. So if they have a family member who might have a history of violence, you should be aware of who else is in the home, just in case. If you hear loud noises, you want to know that someone else is there. Again, stay close to the door, have your phone easily accessible, and use those good de-escalation techniques, such as empathy, listening skills. And in those situations, you'll be the most prepared to calm any client. And that's all we have with regards to safety.